Hello, my name is Summer Gorman, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm so excited to be sharing this word from God with you all today. The title of my message is Let God Be God, and that's also pretty much going to be our bottom line. I remember whenever I was a freshman in college, early on, and I was serving in our student ministry. And during this time, we actually went on a missions trip, and I was co-leading with another leader who was a little bit older than me, but we were leading this group of high school girls, and she tended to be the person that everybody looked to leadership. Just because she was older, she had more experience, that sort of thing. Well, not long into this trip, this leader actually had to leave. And so I was left alone in charge of these high school girls by myself. And even though I had the support of a bunch of leaders and different teammates around me saying, "You've got this, God's got you, like it's all gonna be great," I couldn't help but have this small nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't qualified. And I began to point out all the reasons why God shouldn't have put me in this position. Have you ever done that? Have you ever pointed out all of the reasons why you feel like God shouldn't be elevating you to the position that you're now being placed in? And then it's funny, it never seems to fail that we as people have this tendency to point out all the reasons why God shouldn't be elevating us. And we try to almost hide behind our insecurities and the things that we think unqualify us. And so rather than stepping boldly into what God has for us, we operate instead in fear, anxiety, depression even, and insecurity because of this one thought of being unqualified. And we know that we're not supposed to feel this, so now we're feeling unqualified and insecure, as well as anxious and sad and embarrassed and guilty because I'm not supposed to be feeling this, and all of these things in between because we feel unqualified. So how do we actually overcome this mindset? If we know that we're not supposed to feel it, how do we overcome it? Well, let's look at what the Bible has to say. The Apostle Paul is writing to the church in Corinth in the passage that we're going to be picking up on. It'll be 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 27 through 29. And he's writing to the church of Corinth, which is not unlike our culture today. They placed a lot of emphasis upon proving your worth. They placed a lot of emphasis upon trying to do a bunch of things that qualified you. Whether it was intellect or eloquence or whatever, they had this mindset that you had to prove that you were qualified. And the Apostle Paul addresses this earlier on, which we don't have time to get into, but basically what he says is that that is not what you're supposed to do. And this actually leads to division within their church because they're trying to fight for all of the reasons why they view this as being the right way because of all of these different qualifications. But that's not what God wants. And so let's look at what the Apostle Paul actually writes here. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 27 through 29, "But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of the world and the despised things, and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him." So what is the Apostle Paul communicating here? He's saying that we are never going to be enough. We are never going to be able to prove or do or become enough. And thank God, because if we did, that would mean that every good thing in our life was dependent upon us. It was dependent upon how hard we worked, how smart we were, how qualified we were, and every good thing that came in our life came because we had to earn it. Thank God that it is not that way, because I know that I am abundantly blessed, way more than I would ever be qualified to receive. And I would be willing to bet that you are too. God wants us to have this mindset of complete and total reliance and faith in Him, that it's not up to us, it's up to Him. So how do we actually develop this mindset? How do we develop this mindset that God is the one, that we let God be God instead of us? Well, the Apostle Paul is sharing that we need to stop trying to justify our worth. We need to stop justifying our worth. There's always going to be somebody who's more qualified. There's always going to be somebody who can do more, say words better than you, like fill in the blank. There's always going to be somebody who can do more. But that's not what God's asking us. He's not asking us to be the most intelligent. He's not asking us to be the most eloquent. He's not asking us to be the most successful or the most prestigious. The only thing that God is asking is that we be the most obedient. That's all that God wants from us. He wants us to be obedient. And this comes from stopping trying to prove our worth. It's kind of like a birthday present. Have you ever thought about how weird that concept actually is? Like, here, I'm gonna give you a present because you were born. Like, it's a very weird concept. But that's exactly what it is for our worth. We have already been given worth just because we've been born, because God gave it to us freely. So we need to stop trying to justify it. The second thing that we're supposed to do is rely upon God. Rely upon God. It is God who makes these things happen. It's God who qualifies. It's God who brings about all of our hard work and actually allows there to be fruition from it. You see, God chose the lowly things. That's what the Apostle Paul is sharing in this passage. And the interesting thing about that is when you look at the original term for lowly things, it translates to someone who is held to no account. In other words, that they were viewed so lowly that nobody even acknowledged them. Have you ever felt that way? Like you were so unqualified that you just completely got overlooked? But that's who God chose. And why would God, the God of abundant resources, the God who can choose or use anybody that he wants, why would he choose the lowly things? Have you ever thought about that? Why would he actually do that? Because it is in our weakness that God's glory is put on full display, because people can no longer say, hey, look what I did. It's automatically, hey, look what God did. God made that happen. God's glory is put on full display when we rely upon him. The third thing that we do is we need to walk boldly in what he has called us to do. I want you to picture this with me. Imagine that there's a man who's sitting in prison. It is a dark, gloomy cell. It's full of rats. It's disgusting. It's terrible. And right in front of him is this key. And all he has to do is just reach out, grab it, and he can walk out of there and he'll be completely free. But that's not what he does. Instead of reaching out and grabbing this key, the man just continues to sit there. He just continues to just wait. And he's praying every single day. He's saying, God, set me free. I know that you can do it. You're the great liberator. You're the one who can do this. I put my full faith in you. I trust you. And he believes and he prays with all of this faith, but nothing actually happens. And years go by of him praying this prayer every single day, but he still lives with these chains. He still lives in this prison. And eventually he becomes frustrated and he's like, God, why haven't you freed me yet? And it's simply because he didn't reach out and take that key that was right in front of him. Now, before you go judging the man, how often are we like this? How often do we sit there and pray and beg that God does this amazing miracle, and instead of taking the very key that he's placed right in front of us, we just sit there and wait for him to do it all? Because we refuse to walk boldly in what he's called us to do. It is not our strength, and it is not our will that makes us usable by God. It is our willingness to be used by God. God wants to use us. God wants to partner with us. But this means that we have to stop trying to justify our worth. We have to rely upon him. And we have to walk boldly in what he's called us to do. Can you imagine if we actually did this? The kind of impact that we would have on the world around us? We would be able to live lives transformed and living completely free. And we would help others to do the exact same. We would stop acting like that man sitting in the prison, waiting for God to set us free, because we actually took the key that God has given us and walked boldly in what he had for us. All God wants from us is our obedience. And we just need to let him be God. And that's our bottom line for today, is let God be God and let him shine through you.